Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being here, and thanks, Soren, for bringing me here and Wisdom 2.0. I have 28 minutes, I think, to solve the mystery of our existence. So I won't waste any time. So if you go on the internet and you type out what are the two most important questions in science, or two most open questions in science, the first is, what is the universe made of? And the second is, what's the biological basis of consciousness? And you would think, well, we know what the universe is made of. It's made of force fields, atoms, molecules, particles, gravity. Well, that's less than 0.01% of the visible universe. So 70% of the universe is a mysterious dark energy, which is not the same as Einstein's E is equal to mc squared. It's a force that is the opposite of gravity. So as we sit here in San Francisco, the space between galaxies is expanding faster than the speed of light. And the cosmic horizon is something like 47 billion light years away from where we are. We have no idea what dark energy is. That leaves 30% of the universe, which remains, of which 97% of the 30% is another mysterious entity called dark matter. And it's so called because it's invisible and is referred to as matter because it basically is responsible for most of the gravity in the universe. But we have no idea what it is because it's not atomic. It doesn't interact with light. It doesn't reflect light, refract light, or have anything to do with light. You and I are made of light, and we can't interact with it. So it's probably not only unknown, it's unknowable. So 3% remaining, of which 99.999% is invisible interstellar dust, which we can't see. So the visible universe, which is 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, and uncountable trillions of planets is 0.01%. 0.01%. I'll repeat that. 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, and 60 billion probable habitable planets in just the Milky Way galaxy. That's according to the latest science, the James Webb Telescope and so on. So on scale, our planet is not even 1 grain of sand in all the beaches of our world. Not even 1 grain of sand in all the beaches of our world. And on this is a species that has evolved for 200,000 years, that created written language only 5,000 years ago. And we have the hubris to think we actually can figure it out. So 0.01% is atomic, visible universe. And atoms, as you know, are particles, and particles have a dual nature. They're schizophrenic. When you're observing them, they have a location in space-time. They have units of mass and energy. And when they're not measured, they disappear into probability waves in mathematical space. So what's the universe made of? Well, it's probably the wrong question because it's made of nothing, which leads to the second quandary here. How do we know all this? Well, because we have consciousness. And so consciousness is asking the question, what is the universe made of? And coming up with explanations in consciousness. And we don't know the biological basis of consciousness. And both these questions are unsolvable because they're the wrong questions. The universe is made of nothing. And there's no biological basis of consciousness because consciousness is how we know biology. We know that there's something called biology because we have consciousness. So if we ask the wrong questions, we'll never have the right answers. Okay. So with that, I want to introduce you to just a very basic idea of how we do science and how we do what is called spirituality. Okay. What's the dynamics of science, and is there a reconciliation between these two worldviews? So science simply asks, how do things work? What's going on? It starts with a theory, and then we do experiments, make observations, and if everybody agrees on the observation, we consider it good science. So essentially, science is a system to test out the predictions of our theories, and these theories are also in consciousness. They're conceived in consciousness. The theories are conceived in consciousness. They're known in consciousness, and even the answers come in consciousness. So, but science asks these questions without addressing consciousness. Science is based on, our current science is based on a philosophical idea called naive realism. Naive realism is the idea that what we call the objective world is observer independent. What we call the objective world is observer independent. That's naive realism. It's not a condescending term. It's a term in philosophy, in the philosophy of science, naive realism. The picture of the world is the human experience of it, not the crocodile experience of it, or the experience of an insect with 100 eyes, or a bat that only knows the echo of ultrasound, etc., etc. The objective world is the human perceptual activity of the objective world. And if humans disappear, this world would look exactly like it is, even though there's no one observing it. And it would be the human look of it. So that's how science works, and it's pretty effective in creating technology, large language models, AI, all of that is because of the scientific method. On the other hand, spirituality asks a different question. Who am I? Who or what experiences the world? Why do we exist? The great Indian poet Tagore said that I exist is a perpetual surprise. That I exist is a perpetual surprise. And if you're not surprised that you exist, then your humanity is not complete. So this conversation has now been taken over by both philosophy and science. So these are some of recent issues of Scientific American and New Scientist. I don't have time to go into all the details, but the right questions are being asked right now. Is there a biological basis of consciousness which is beyond random mutations and natural selection? Does consciousness guide evolution? Is the universe conscious? On and on. And yet there are differences between science and spirituality. So in science, we treat matter as the beginning point of everything. So the whole universe starts with the production of matter. Never mind that before the Big Bang, there was no such thing. There was no even space-time. But you have to start somewhere. So science starts with matter is basis of reality. And that's why we have a hard problem of consciousness. As if matter is the basis of reality and the brain is made of matter, then how does it produce thoughts and sensations and images and feelings and intuition and insight and imagination and creativity? You can't answer that question if you assume that matter is all there is. And then there are other things that I mentioned over there that science assumes. Subject-object split, matter produces mind, reality is independent of the observer, although we can't prove it. The picture and perception of the world is the human look of it, and the base also, there is local realism. This world is real, and local realism means that there are interactions in the theater of space-time based on the laws of physics. Spirituality, on the other hand, starts with opposite assumptions. Consciousness is the starting point. The subject-object split is actually artificial. Mind and matter, brain, body and world are complementary activities in awareness, of awareness, and reality includes the observer. It has to. You can't have an observed without an observer. I mean, the two go together. And then the picture of the world that corresponds to always corresponds to the biological organism that is entangled with it. And the theater of space-time and causality is a simulation or an illusion or a fluctuation or a vibration in consciousness. And it's frequently referred to as Maya in the ancient Indian wisdom traditions. So there are also similarities. Matter at a microscopic level starts to become less material. And so we see these similarities that are also there. The world is made of objects, is what science would say, and spirituality would say the world is made of experiences. So just let's stop over there for a moment and just let's try and figure this one idea, that is the world made of objects or is the world made of experiences? So maybe we can start with this. If I asked you, what is this? You would say, it's a bunch of flowers. It's a bunch of flowers. It's an object where there's a flower pot and there are flowers. Now replace that word, object, with the word experience. So what's the experience? Colors, texture, smell, sound, taste. That's the experience. If a newborn baby were looking at it without any cultural indoctrination or scientific indoctrination, it would not know that this is a flower pot and these are flowers. It would only experience, without even actually any interpretation, it would experience colors, shapes, forms, tastes, textures, smells, sound. That's the experience. Then you say, where is the experience happening? Is there any color in your brain? No. The brain is dark and it's full of electrochemical activity, but that experience is not in the brain. It's not in your eyes. There's no picture of that in your eyes. There's no picture of that in your brain. If I put a knife through the brain, you don't feel any pain, which is the most primordial of all experiences. So that experience of seeing the colors or any of the other five senses is not happening in the brain. Ask any neuroscientist, that's called the hard problem of consciousness. What is happening in the brain are neural correlates of that experience, electrochemistry. So then where is this experience happening? Where's this experience happening? Where is the experience of Deepak in this audience happening? Where is the experience happening? The only word that you can use is happening in consciousness. It's happening in awareness. So the next question is, where is this consciousness in which this experience is happening? Where is it? Can I find it? And the answer is, you can't. And why can't you? Well, because consciousness doesn't have a form. It's what arises as form. But consciousness doesn't have a form. And if consciousness doesn't have a form, then it has no borders. Because anything that has a form has a border. And if it has no borders, then it must be infinite. And spaceless. And timeless. And non-perceptual. And inconceivable. And fundamental. And beyond comprehension. How do you comprehend the inconceivable and the incomprehensible. So the conclusion here is nothing perceivable or conceivable is inherently real. If you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, think about it, imagine it, conceptualize it, mathematically map it out, it's not real. Anything that you can see or conceive is not inherently real. Only the inconceivable and imperceivable is real. And that's where we are today in our understanding of what is called the hard problem of consciousness. Now, I'm not going to go into details about all this, but what scientists call the qualia quantum field is what spiritual people or people interested in consciousness call the qualia field. And they behave exactly like each other. Superposition, fluctuations, entanglement, the source of all experience, activated through measurement, self-organizing but imbued with subjectivity, and in the state of subject-object unification, least entropy, and if you want to use spiritual words, non-dual is a scientific word. Love could be the spiritual word. Love not as a mere sentiment or emotion, but the ultimate truth at the heart of creation, that observer and observed, seer and scenery, lover and beloved, perceiver and perceived are one process. And when we experience that, we feel a different kind of love, which is radiant, not necessarily focused on anyone, but not denied to anyone. Love as the ultimate truth at the heart of creation. So in my book recently on quantum body, which by the way was my last book, my next book is on AI and spirituality, which seems to be a very popular topic these days. But last book, I made the case with a quantum physicist and another fellow endocrinologist that what we call quantum mechanics is actually a model in quantum consciousness. Everything that we create or think of as reality are actually models of reality, and any scientist would agree with that. So quantum mechanics and quantum consciousness are interdependent. And this brings us to the biggest issue of our times, that naive realism is probably very convenient for doing science and creating technology, but it actually hides the truth. And if you want to go deeper into this, you might want to go to my YouTube channel, the Chopra Well, where I have about 25 conversations with Don Hoffman, who is not only a cognitive scientist, but a brain scientist, but also works with mathematicians and quantum physicists, where he makes the case against reality, that what we experience as reality, including our own body-mind, is actually a simulation, and actually a fundamentally, inherently illusory, time-bound process, including our body-mind, which is part of the theater of space-time causality. It's a projection of consciousness. And if it's a simulation, then who or what is doing the simulation? You are. You are, beyond the conditioned mind. So this leads to an extraordinary conclusion. This experience is happening in consciousness. We've agreed there. Right? This experience is happening in consciousness. But if consciousness is outside of space-time, then this whole experience is being processed outside of space-time. And the real you is outside of space-time. Don Hoffman calls this process the entanglement of conscious agents in the matrix of conscious agents. Check out those 25 conversations that I've had on YouTube, conversations with Don Hoffman on the case against reality, and he will go much deeper into an understanding that, yes, we are living in a simulation, and the simulation is through us. Conscious agents, which is a cognitive scientist word for soul in a matrix of conscious agents, which is the technical word for spirit. So we are conscious agents as souls in an ocean of conscious agents interacting with each other, projecting this and this simultaneously. Okay, before I go any further, since I have only 7 minutes or so, are you finding this interesting? Okay. Now, there's a reason I asked you this question. I'm going to ask you the same question, and please follow my instructions carefully. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm going to ask you the same question, and the question is, are you finding this interesting? But I don't want you to answer it till I raise my hand, okay? Agreed? Are you finding this conversation interesting? So my question is a thought, it's a mental event. Your answer is a thought, it's a mental event. In between is you, the real you, in whom the mental event occurs. And that's consciousness. That's direct experience of consciousness or awareness, or what we call presence. So now, let me ask you the same question. Don't answer it. Drop into that awareness. Do you find this conversation interesting? That's who you are. That's a presence. In spiritual traditions, we say soul, connected to spirit. It's not your mind, which might be saying, I wish I'd gone to the bathroom before the lecture, or something, right? Something. It's not your mind. It's the presence in which mind occurs as a time-bound experience. But the presence is infinite and not in time. There was the same presence when you were a baby. Same presence, different body, different mind. Same presence when you were a teenager. Same now. And because it's not in time, outside of space-time, it is not subject to birth and death. And to have that constant presence as the core essence of your being is called freedom, liberation from the constructs of the human mind. From the constructs of the human mind. So, with that, I'm not going to go how this affects our lifespan or health span, except for one word. If you realize that what we call aging is the metabolism of time, aging is, there's a phrase in ancient wisdom traditions in India, time is the consumer and we are its food. We are time's food. But if you understand what I'm saying right now, then a relationship with the timeless can extend your lifespan. So all this work that's happening on longevity, etc., is not addressing the spiritual component. And the most important component of health span is a relationship with your own self, which is timeless. Water cannot wet it, as the Upanishads say, fire cannot burn it, weapons cannot shatter it. It's unborn and it is not subject to death. So there are many ways we could actually go into this much deeper, but we don't have to right now, other than when we do this, we had some major breakthroughs. First, there's a shift in identity. We are not a body-mind having an experience of the universe. We are an awareness in which the body-mind and universe is recycling and evolving. That brain and mind are complementarities of this deeper awareness, that existence itself is self-aware, that the experiencer is eternal, only the experience is in time, that infinity cannot be compromised, and that the world is a magic show, a simulation, a production, and you are the magician. You are the producer, the choreographer, the director, the hero, and the villain of the same story that you're projecting as a conditioned mind. And when we have that, when we have access to different levels of reality. Again, this is a map from ancient Indian Vedantic tradition. You say, the waking state is a lucid dream in a vivid now. This is the biggest illusion, the waking state. A lucid dream in a vivid now. Wittgenstein, the great German philosopher, said, our life is a dream, we are asleep. But once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we're dreaming. And so when we wake up from the waking state, we go to the fuzzy dream at night, which is actually closer to reality because it's a fluctuations of consciousness. Then we go to deep sleep where everything disappears, non-local. We're back to where we started from, before birth, in deep sleep. And if you cultivate awareness in deep sleep, that leads to soul consciousness. You anchor yourself in soul consciousness, which is just simple. As you're listening to me, be aware of that which is listening. As you're listening to me, be aware of that which is listening. That presence is your soul. And when you start to identify that, it becomes a presence in waking, dreaming, and sleeping, which is called cosmic consciousness, to be in the world and not of it, local and non-local at the same time. That leads to what is called divine consciousness, which is you see everyone as an expression of that same consciousness, and you have a relationship with it. This is where synchronicity and spontaneous fulfillment of desire, entanglement, and meaningful coincidences all become the norm. And there's also loss of the fear of death, because death happens to the changing experiences, but not to you. And divine consciousness ultimately leads to unity consciousness, which is you realize that that presence in you, which is the all-pervading presence, is the presence in which the whole universe is recycling and evolving as what? As sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts, in the same way as those flowers. So we are now looking at milestones, and these are some things that have been documented. We do a lot of research on people who attend retreats, the shift in their sense of self, shift in emotions from fear to love, shift in cognition, quieter mind, shift in perception, not being victimized by memory, insight, intuition, vision, creativity, flow, transcendence, loss of personal agency, and ultimately the loss of the fear of death. So I'm not going to have time to show you these slides, but just look at these pictures for a moment. So you might see a horse and a person riding the horse, or you might see an old person with a beard. Well, actually there's nothing out there. These are colors in your consciousness, and they're in superposition till you choose. The moment you choose it, it becomes one or the other. They're all images in superposition. They're gorgeous, actually. So everything you see there is not in the picture. Neither the dragons nor the face. There's just colors constructed in consciousness, appearing in consciousness, disappearing out of consciousness. So who are we and what is reality? Field of infinite possibilities, formless, without cause, irreducible, infinite, fundamental, and infinitely creative, unfolding through synchronicity, the source of intention and attention, free of modifications of experience, self-organizing, and rooted in this sense, I am. Not I am Deepak. Deepak is a socially controlled hallucination. Thank you.